Just as Daniel tells us in the Old Testament that rulers are set up by God and allowed to fall by God. Doesn't mean he causes them, it means he allows it according to his will. This is a continuation in Romans 13 of what we just discussed in Romans 12 of how ought we to be. So this is a how ought we to be part 2. We are going to encounter things in this world that we don't like, that should be the norm as a part of being in this world and not of it. Things are going to happen around us that we don't like, that we have nothing to do with, we have no business being a part of. Romans 12:2, be not conformed to this world. So naturally the things that go on in this world are going to be things that we don't always like. That is the expectation that we should have. However, as a significant caveat to that, we must understand that God is always in control, and there is nothing that he has not foreseen. There is nothing that he does not know about. There is nothing that he is going to be taken by surprise regarding. The prophecies have already been written. The end has already been written. It's all going to go a certain way. And while we're here, we just sometimes have to suck it up, knowing that the end has already been written and God wins. And if you're on God's team, you're going to win too. So sometimes you just have to deal. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. For there is no power but of God. At the end of the day, he wins. At the end of the day, he is sovereign over all. He allows man his own free will choices, and man is human, and man messes up. And not all men are remade, spiritually reborn in the image of God. So they're going to be left to their own devices, and as the natural order is, things decay, things get worse. The law of entropy. So without God, natural man stinks. But for the grace of God, go we. For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. And Daniel says this too, that there's nothing that God does not allow, that rulers are allowed and disallowed at his behest. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Talking about authority and judgment. That is not a you can lose your salvation situation. That is an admonition that God's got this under control, and you need to recognize that. Rulers are not a terror to good works. Laws do not exist for the lawful. Laws exist for the lawless and as judgments and or recompenses to make injured parties whole. If you are a law abider, the law does not exist for you. The law exists for someone who would seek to break it, to penalize them punitively. Rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have the same. Thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. Again, laws exist for the lawless. So yeah, if you're lawless and without Christ, then you have very much need to worry. For he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. For those who are not in the truth. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. Because you have to live with yourself. You have to live with yourself with the choices that you make. Don't do anything that's going to bring guilt or shame upon you. Because that's just going to make your life that much more difficult. And the people's around you. So just for conscience sake, just don't be that guy. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due. Just like Jesus said, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. Custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Owe no man anything, don't be a debtor. But to love one another. That's what we owe each other, love. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. So this is one of the I think the misunderstandings of those who try to follow the commandments and things like that. All of the law, 613 commandments, fall into one of two buckets. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you go through the 10 specifically, they tell you, they fall into one of those buckets. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Why am I blanking? I always blank. That's all right. Because that's God telling me to go read it direct from the Word rather than try to quote it from memory. Exodus 20, verse 1. God spake all these words, saying, these are the 10 commandments. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Which bucket does that fall in? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Next, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Which bucket does that fall in? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Don't put anybody above him. It says, don't bow down. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. These are love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. The next ones are honor your father and mother. Thou shalt not kill, commit adultery, steal, bear false witness, or lie and covet. Love your neighbor as yourself. The same with the rest of the commandments. They are designed to fall into one of two buckets, which is why when Jesus was tempted in Matthew 22 by the legal expert, saying, which is the greatest commandment in the law? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. The second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets. Which is why in the New Testament, you're told multiple times, all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, because that is one of two commandments that the law boils down to. And if you are demonstrating love toward neighbor, you're not going to injure them in whatever way that might occur. Owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended or brought to a common denominator in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. It's what they all boil down to. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. Because the whole reason of the law is for ones who would break it and to make the injured parties whole. It is punitive. It is penalties established for breaking the law, which is represented by a lack of love toward God or neighbor. So if you love God and you love neighbor, you're not going to break the law. And that knowing the time, that now it is, love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. Because it's a fixed target. The day of salvation, the day of judgment, the day of salvation, the day of the rapture of the church, the start of the 70th week, all those are fixed targets on the timeline. We might not always know what they are, but that doesn't mean that they're any less fixed, which means that we're continually moving toward them. They're fixed, and time is always moving forward. So every single second that progresses us on this timeline moves us closer to those end goals. Our salvation will always be nearer than we first believed until such a time as we reach that fixed target. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. We are children of the light and of the day. We're not of the night nor of darkness. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying. But put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lusts thereof. Walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. I'll see you guys later.